Welcome back, folks. It's the third installment of the Daily Record Sports Show, Sports with Joe and Ish. I'm the sports editor at the San Marcos Daily Record, Joe Vizzelli, and I'm here with the go-to man as far as the San Marcos Rattlers go, Ishmael Johnson. This week, of course, both San Marcos and Texas State were busy. Texas State traveled up to Illinois to play against the Fighting Illini, and of course, San Marcos played Seguin in their home and district opener. We're going to talk a little bit about San Marcos and Texas State, as well as preview next week's matchups. But before we get to that, we're going to go to a short break, and we'll be back to talk a little bit about Texas State and a little bit about San Marcos. Welcome back, folks, to Sports with Joe and Ish. And of course, we're going to start out with Texas State playing up in Illinois this weekend against the Fighting Illini. It was a tough 42-35 loss. And really, to a man, after the game, yes, they played the Illini really well, but they weren't satisfied. And really, there was no moral victories as far as they were concerned. They went up there for one sole purpose, and that was to win the game. And, Ish, the two things that kind of stood out to me was the offense, the way that they played. I think we're kind of figuring out this offense is going to be really strong, but I don't know your thoughts on the defense. I think that's really the big question mark looking forward for Texas State.
Yeah, the game started off, right on the wrong foot for Texas State. Ferguson catching that long touchdown pass right out of the gate, or run, I believe, right out of the gate, and then it was playing catch up from there. It looked to the normal Texas State fan, it looked like, same old story, like they're going to give up the big play. They battled back the offense, Tyler Jones having a career high in passing, Robert Lowe having a great game as well. The offense, I was watching it here. You were there at the game. I was watching it here on ESPN News and ESPN3. They had it. And the announcers were really crediting. It was really unusual to see Tyler Jones getting national coverage and national praise as well, because they were talking about his first touchdown where it was kind of looked like a run pass option, or almost looked like a broken play almost, and he just kind of flicked it back to Ben Aja. Robert Lowe getting a lot of praise, and it looked like Texas State, offensively, they were able to keep up. Obviously, the turnover at the end, but throughout the whole game, they had that two-score lead sometime in the beginning. But like you said, moral victories, like you talked to Coach Fran after the game, moral victories, the program is past the point where moral victories are a thing. Now it's you got to beat Illinois. It's no longer we competed.
Sure, and as you were saying, Texas State had 26 first downs. They ran 91 plays, which is a pretty impressive number compared to Illinois ran 66. They racked up 475 yards on offense to 485 for the Illini. Tyler Jones goes 29 of 43 for 336 yards and 4 touchdowns in the game. And really, it was impressive. Yeah. He's looked impressive all year long, and I think we're starting to figure out this offense is going to put up some points. But, we knew going into the year the defense was going to be a question mark, and I think it's starting to show really in the defensive line. They didn't get much pressure on the Illini in the game. Wes Lunt was kind of able to sit back and really he had tons of time. He ended up throwing 39 passes. He goes 25 for 39 for 266 and 2 touchdowns. And he just had too much time. I think they had 1 sack. Chris Peterson had a sack in the third quarter, but really there, and also at safety. Targan had a great game, but you didn't get that many impact plays from the safety position. What you see similar things from them, from the safety and from the defensive line?
I do. You mentioned the lack of playmaking. In the game. Jamad Williams dropped an interception that could have, turned the tide there. Colby Targan, we talked about him. Mager got beat a couple times during the game. He's that gambling corner like we always talk about. He's the one that's going to give up probably the 50-yard pass, but he's not going to, he's going to make sure he's probably going to give you about 4 picks on the season as well, just because that's the type of player he is. Defensively, I will say I was impressed by David Mayo. He completely took over that game from the linebacking core, having to take over from Mike Orakpo. From the linebacking perspective, it didn't look like Orakpo was missed that much because David Mayo took over, and he got a lot of praise as well from the announcers on ESPN. A lot of the praise from the defense, and he led the team in tackles, I believe, on the night. And he had an impressive game, but the defensive line, you mentioned it, Chris Peterson with the 1 sack, but other than that, not much production there. Secondary, as far as the safeties go, lacking in playmakers on that side of the ball.
Sure, and like you were saying, David Mayo, I thought had an impressive game. I mean, the thing that really impressed me about him is any time that someone's going to run the ball, he just stops momentum. I mean, he puts some big hits on guys, and the momentum stops. There's no getting out of a tackle from David Mayo, and that it showed. He had 15 tackles in the game on Saturday, and really, for missing Mike Orakpo, I didn't notice that. I mean, he's a great player. We all know that, but I thought Jared Jeter-Gilman did a good job. I thought Stephen Smith did a good job, and we all knew that Mayo was going to have to be a big factor. He was going to have to step up and really, not replace, but in some ways pick up the production because of what they lose in Mike Orakpo. But looking forward, I think the question for them is going to be, can they figure out the right mix at safety?
Yeah.
Jamad Williams has made some plays for them. You're seeing plays from Colby Targan, but Aaron Shaw is not producing at the level that they need him to produce at right now. And the corners, I thought they had a solid game, but not a great game. Like you were saying with David Mims and Craig Mager, they made a couple impact plays, but not enough. And I think that's going to be the question looking forward, because I think this offense is going to put up some points. But we're going to see if the defense can produce. And we'll talk a little bit later about that in the game that they have this weekend coming up against Tulsa. It's going to be another challenge. That's another team that likes to throw the ball. They're not going to run the ball very much. But, of course, before we get into that, let's switch gears a little bit, and let's go to San Marcos, who, of course, played against Seguin this weekend. I wasn't there for the game, but you were. Just to take folks through the game and what I'm turning out.
Penalties. That was pretty much what Coach Soto was saying after the game. That's what was apparent throughout the game. I believe I tallied 9 or 10 false starts alone in the first half, 23 penalties on the whole night. But despite all that, they were in the game. They had a score lead heading into the fourth quarter. Seguin put up 13 points. San Marcos could only put up 6. In that final quarter, and they were down a touchdown, needing to score with under a minute to go. Seguin kicked the ball off. They put a little strategic move in there. The coaches put David Hamilton in at returner. He returns it all the way back for a touchdown, called back for a holding penalty. The coaches, the crowd was not having that. From my perspective, I was on the sidelines by then. It looked like Brandon Chapman drove him to the ground. It didn't look like he had his jersey, but the refs call what they see, and that's how it ended. Hamilton threw a pick in the end, but Coach talked about those penalties. It shouldn't have come down to that. He said the team should have been more disciplined. And if you saw the game, the defense, that was what impressed me the most. That was the least amount of points allowed in the game. Trey Wooten had a big game. Isaiah Hernandez had a big sack. Zach Pinales had an interception. Like, the defense came to play that game. And I talked last week about the defense needed this game. The offense, sure, they struggled with the penalties, with the inconsistency and the interceptions, but they're going to pick it up. We've seen the offense, what they can do. We've seen what David Hamilton can do. The defense needed this game to get their confidence up. Despite the loss, I think they have, we'll talk more about Memorial, but I think they have another chance to get that first district win this weekend.
Sure, and it was funny because that's exactly what you were talking about in your preview. When I read it, it was, this is a big chance for the defense to step up and perform. And from what I saw read from your game story and what I saw as far as the stats go, it looked like they played well. And did you notice any adjustments that they made with the bye week and an extra week to kind of prepare and work on some things?
I think when I went out to practice Monday morning, I talked to Coach afterwards, and he was working on a lot of block shedding drills. He was coaching the defensive ends about getting that arm through and ripping through the block. Something that they weren't really able to do, because when in East Central and Victoria East, they would kind of be stood up by the linemen and they couldn't move. They didn't know how to do a swim move or a rip through, and that's what Coach taught them on Monday morning. I'm assuming through the whole week and even including the bye week. Just ripping through, finding some stunning action for those defensive ends, because it shows here Isaiah Hernandez, defensive end, sack. Jonas Nava, another lineman, sack. So they had 2 sacks in the game, something they weren't able to get in the first couple. So I think those are the adjustments they made. Schematically, they're still a 4-2-5 defense, just like Texas State is. But just skill-wise and giving them some extra, moves in the arsenal is what they're kind of working on, and that's what you got to do. They're a young defense. They're still learning how to play the game a lot, play the position. So I think I saw that adjustment, and we'll see if they continue to give these players some more moves to their arsenal. Who knows?
And sure, like we were talking about with Texas State, if your defensive line can get pressure on the quarterback, that's going to make the secondary look better. The linebackers can get to the second level and make the tackle on the running backs. And so that's going to be a big factor. And really, everyone will tell you it starts with the defensive line. Same thing with Texas State, and that's a good sign for San Marcos to start to see that from their defensive line. If they can get that production, you would figure they'll be able to turn it around because of the opponents. The schedule's only going to get tougher as they get deeper into the district season. But of course, we're going to throw it to a little short break here before we come back, and we'll be previewing both Texas State and San Marcos as opponents next week. Welcome back, folks, and we're going to start out with talking about Texas State's opponent this weekend, Tulsa. The Golden Hurricane are 1-2 on the season. Texas State will play them at 7 p.m. on Saturday. The game will be, again, broadcast on ESPN News. And the thing about Tulsa that's very similar to Illinois is they're a pass-heavy team this year. They've actually thrown for, on average, 313 yards per game. They're led by quarterback Dane Evans, who started a little bit last year for them toward the end of the season. This year, he's off to an okay start. He's got a 56% completion percentage. He's thrown 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. But Tulsa really started out with a tough schedule. They played Tulane to start out the season. They ended up winning in double overtime. They followed up with a real tough game against Oklahoma and against Florida Atlantic. And, Ish, this seems to me to be a real big chance for Texas State to get the momentum back as they head into conference play.
Yeah, Illinois, they really could have used that win, but I think everybody kind of expected them, or kind of not expected, but hopes they would split. It's tough to win 2 out-of-conference road games, no matter who you play, and so I think they're hoping for a split. Tulsa, not not a bad opponent. They're kind of a mid-tier, which I think is a fair assessment. Traditionally, they've been a very high octane spread offense. Gus Malzahn was their offensive coordinator at one time. Chad Morris from Clemson was their offensive coordinator at one time. So they've had some high-powered offenses, and this is going to be a chance for Texas State to kind of show what they really have if they could beat this team on the road, a mid-tier team that's still a solid school.
And again, like we said this week or last week with Illinois, this is going to be a game where I feel like they're going to have to score some points. This is going to be a game where you're going to have to score 30, 35 points to come away with a victory. And sort of a similar theme to even Navy, where you felt like they were going to have to score 30. Mm-hmm. Illinois, you felt like they're going to have to score 30. And it looked like that might have been enough in those first two games. But unfortunately, the defense kind of struggled. And I think the defense is going to be again challenged this week. But like we were talking about with momentum, if Texas State can win this game and get to 2-2 out of the non-conference, the Sun Belt to me is wide open this year. You look at UL Lafayette this year, they were the preseason favorite, and really they have not been impressive through their first 4 games. They played quality opponents, Boise State certainly, and as well as Mississippi State, but in those 2 games, it was never really close. They never were in the game at all. They ended up they lost to Boise, I believe, 38-3 last Saturday, and so with the Sun Belt being as wide open as it is, if you can get some momentum, especially heading into that game against Idaho, maybe you get a chance to get to 4-2 when you're going against Lafayette, and a chance to maybe put yourself among the elite teams in the Sun Belt. This could be a big momentum swinger for them if they can win this game. It
really could. Georgia Southern's proved to be a very good addition to the Sun Belt. They were predicted to be, kind of in the middle or near the bottom. Like you mentioned, Lafayette. Sun Belt is really wide open. There's really no power rankings, that you can really throw up that's kind of consistent with the performances we've seen. Texas State, you could say Texas State's near the middle, but they've had probably one of the more difficult out-of-conference schedules so far in the conference. And like you said, this kind of momentum heading into Idaho, heading into the eventual Thursday night game, against Lafayette, or is it Tuesday?
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday night, on ESPN2. Big lights, heading into those games if you can get some momentum, because Idaho, you never want to overlook an opponent, but Idaho getting right out of the gate, you can possibly get that 1-0 start already, and that's all that matters. Conference play is where it comes down to.
And this is going to be a team in the Golden Hurricane that they're going to be able to score some points on. I mean, they've given up almost 45 a game to some teams this year. So they're going to be able to score some points. I think the offense is going to go in with plenty of confidence. I'd expect Robert Lowe to have another 100-yard game. Tyler Jones to throw around 250 to 270. And they're going to have a chance to, if they can make some stops on defense, they can definitely take some things about what they did against Illinois. I thought they had great pursuit to the ball against the spread team. The Golden Hurricane are going to try to do the similar things. They're going to try to get the ball out in space to their wide receivers and their running backs. And if you can pursue the ball well like they did against Illinois, at times, that's the way that they're going to have to stop Tulsa this week. And maybe you spring that win in and you go in, like we were saying, 2-2 into conference play. Of course, we're going to switch gears here again, and we're going to talk about the Rattlers, who are going to play this weekend against San Antonio Memorial. They're a team that, similar to last week with Seguin, are going into this thing as 0-3 or 0-4 this year.
I believe so, 0-3.
Just take me through a preview of what you're expecting from this game this weekend. I believe it's against the Minutemen?
Yes. And, this is where they have to put it together. We talked the first 2 games, we talked about the offense having it. Last game, the defense having it. This is the game, another winless opponent. They're going to be motivated to beat San Marcos on their home turf in San Antonio. But this is the game where the composer has to lock down, the team has to lock down, and both units, offense and defense, have to come to play, because you can't go into a game against Alamo Heights 0-2 in the district. You have to come out, because that's going to be a really tough game at home, no matter where you play that game. Alamo Heights is a top-tier high school. So San Antonio Memorial, you got to get that first district win, get that momentum, get the confidence up to head into Alamo Heights with that confidence to be able to play them up to the ability that we know the Rattlers can.
Sure, and you never want that 0 hanging in the column. I mean, it's something that you just got to get over, and the earlier you can get that win, especially when you're playing teams like Alamo Heights and Kerrville-Tivy down the stretch.
Bernie Champion.
If you can get some confidence, they've got some home games. It's looking like, for right now, they're going to have a chance to maybe build some momentum this week. If they can do that and going into the rest of the district season, maybe they can turn things around and get to the point where they're in the playoffs this year. And it's something that they've been talking about to a man. I mean, before the season, that's been one of their major goals. It's something that the seniors want to do. This is one of their last shots to do it. There's a lot of guys that are on this team that have been there through the wars in the past 3 years. And so do you get the sense that they really want to have this be the year that they turn things around and establish San Marcos as a playoff contender?
Yeah, when I was on the sidelines of the Seguin game, there was constant emotion just pouring out, chanting off, the offense, you guys got this, you guys got this. When Hamilton did that last pick, his emotions, he ran out, he walked out to the side, he had to compose himself because it impacted him a lot. They take this game very seriously, as they should, and it shows the heart that they put in, because Coach Soto never fails to mention the hard work that they put in and day out, especially, like you said, for those seniors. Hamilton's not a senior, but he wants to win it for those seniors, that this is their last chance. And Soto did say at the beginning, their goal is the playoffs. They were one game out of the playoffs last year. That's something, especially when you're in high school, to get one game close to making the playoffs, where anything can happen, that lights a fire under your team. And I think that is going to motivate these guys to get it this year.
Sure, and we're going to wrap it up for this week's show. Of course, you can check out the show on sanmarcosrecord.com. Usually on a Tuesday or Wednesday, we'll have it up there for you. Of course, always, if you want to follow us on Twitter, Ish and I are very active on Twitter. My account is at SMDRJoe, and Ish will be tweeting off of at SMDR Sports, as well as at Ish_46. We'll keep you guys updated on everything from Texas State as well as the San Marcos Rattlers. So we're going to wrap it up this week. Until next time, thanks folks for tuning in.